SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by the cheery and the admirable, or
Yes.
admirable. I'm not sure which one's better. Casey Trujillo. Casey, we're glad you're here. And we are thrilled to have Emilia D'Anzica, who is a true powerhouse in the field of customer success and revenue growth. Casey and I had a chance to have now run into Emilia at a couple of different shows around the world, because not only is she the founder and managing director of Growth Molecules, which is a leading management consulting firm that helps organizations drive profit by maximizing customer value. In other words, she's really good at training awesome leaders in the CS world. She's also a super top voice on LinkedIn, working on advisory boards and contributing to the Forbes Business Council. She is a rock star. We're super pumped to have her here. Emilia, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Todd and Casey, thank you for having me today. I'm excited.
I think I have a little, I'm going to admit, I'm going to become vulnerable because of SaaS Therapy, Todd. I'm already jealous of Emilia because she's always speaking at the places we are. I'm not always speaking. She's always speaking at these things. She's a celebrity. And so we feel honored to have her in. If you're not following her on LinkedIn, please do so. I'm sure if you're attending any customer success events, she's probably there speaking about the topic we're gonna discuss in just a second. But Emilia, a lot of people always like to know our guests on a little bit more personal level. So I'm going to give you 3 would you rather questions. You get to choose one of them. And if you ever want to give some background of why you would choose that, please do so. All right. You ready?
Yes. Let's go.
Would you rather be part of a company's early stage growth journey or join a well-established company needing transformation?
I'm an early stage company kind of girl. I like going into big messes and chaos and putting order in place, having crunchy conversations. I think that's really exciting to me. I can do transformations and go in big companies. What I have found is that I'm a little impatient just in everything in general. And so startup land is a lot better for my personality.
Very cool. And Todd, let's make note of, we got to dive deeper into crunchy conversations. I've never heard that one. I want to learn more.
I want to know what a crunchy conversation is, because I feel like every conversation I have with Casey is probably really crunchy.
Emilia, okay. Would you rather attend a tech conference that is in Milan or organize a client retreat on the Amalfi Coast?
Oh, you're killing me. Well, first of all, I'm from Napoli, so the Amalfi Coast is my backyard, as far as I'm concerned, and I've been there so many times. I also love big cities like New York, Milan, but there's nothing like the feeling of the sand and your feet and the ocean. So I have to pick the coast.
Oh, sounds wonderful. I need to go there. Okay, that was fantastic. I knew she had she was from Italy, so I had to throw that one in there, Todd. All right, the last one is, would you rather lead a project focused on developing new AI-driven features for customer engagement or focus on enhancing the onboarding experience to boost retention?
I think I would rather do onboarding only because AI is really moving so quickly. There are a lot of data scientists that we can pull in to do that better than I can. Onboarding is really one of my specialties, and I've onboarded maybe at least 1,000 customers in my career. So I'd really want to go deep on that.
Amazing. That was great to know. And Emilia, before Todd dives into the topic today, explain a little bit about Growth Molecules, the company that you're over, and what's your sweet spot? What do you do? I actually think maybe you had our last guest talk to you before, because Todd, on her site, it says, we grow and we protect and grow revenue. That's a very simple message that tells me what you do. Our last guest, Anthony Pierre. Am I saying that right, Todd?
I hope Anthony never watches this. It's Pierre.
Anthony, don't watch this. Pierre, perfect. He talked about we need to say what we actually do, not all these other
Mhm.
acronyms or things like that. So I love that. So give the audience a 1 or 2 minute little background about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a management consulting firm. We focus on customer success and experience, and we do three things. One, training for anything post sales. So leadership, support, account management, success. Two, we do a lot of advisory work. So we go in as fractional leaders, we do diagnostic assessments, we do customer journey mapping, which we'll dive into in a moment. And then three, we are certified in several customer success platforms and technologies. So we not only go in and assess, but we also optimize and implement. And so we're really a full stack of services because the 12 people in the organization have all been former leaders of customer success. So I've been on the boots on the ground CSM, but I've also been a chief customer officer. And that's the kind of experience we bring to the table.
I love it. So cool. So basically, your advisors, your educators, and you'll even do help with technical configurations for their CSP. So really, really awesome
Exactly.
company. You mentioned a word that I've heard a lot lately. I feel like customer journey mapping is a term that a lot of people probably are not super familiar with unless they have been in CS leadership for a long time. And maybe a good place to start there, because customer journey mapping is, I think a lot of people hear that and they think, okay, well, so that's just like the touch points of the customer throughout the journey, or like how would you define customer journey mapping? What does that look like, and what are people missing when they hear that term?
Sure. So the way I see customer journey is it's a cohesive experience. The customer will go through far before they ever even know your company's brand. So they have a pain point. They're going to the internet, maybe they're asking their friends for advice or former colleagues, and then they start the search. And when they see your brand on the page, what's that first experience? How is your marketing team selling, enticing them to click and then go through that journey? And often marketing builds persona, cards and actions and strategies to get the customers through the door. But those people are not the same people that may be the actual user of the product. And
Mm,
as a result, there's a very disparate customer journey map that people often go through. What they think they got, let's say a hammer to nail in and hang a beautiful piece of art, isn't actually a hammer. It doesn't actually work, and that's because there isn't a full customer journey. So when we bring people in, we insist we want someone from product. We want to understand, what are they building? Do they even know the voice of the customer? And so, really, a customer journey is the foundation that brings your internal organization together to understand, what pain point are you solving for? How are you going to solve it? And how do you keep them engaged? Right? We live in a reoccurring economy. And so, going to get your nails done one time isn't what the salon's aiming for. I'm a terrible client. I don't even do my nails. But you want them to keep coming back. And so that is what we really do in these customer journey mapping experiences for companies. We bring leaders together, and you'll often see what sales is selling and thinks the customer journey map is very far from what is actually being delivered. And we help break those silos down.
so okay, this sounds super important. Who am I inviting to this initial stakeholder meeting where you're going to explain what this journey mapping looks like and you get this intel and this feedback?
Mhm.
At an organization, again, everybody has different roles and might not have a position, but if you were going to give a recommendation and you're going to come help us do this, Amelia,
Mhm.
who are you asking to be in the room?
Yeah, well, first it depends how large your organization is, how many segments, who are you serving, all of those different things. We really advise, start with your ideal customer, who is successful with your product right now, or that you're seeing high churn, you're losing customers. And then we focus on just one thing, and we bring the key leaders in marketing, really your go to market, marketing, product, sales, customer success. If we can get your engineering leader there, it's incredibly important as well, because often these teams don't speak to one another. The big thing is we live in a world where companies are very spread out, right? Our clients have teams in maybe Israel, New York, San Francisco, Australia, Japan. How do you bring these people together? Thankfully, there's Zoom. Now there's more budget to bring people together. It feels like with our clients recently, we bring those leaders in and we help them go through an exercise that has nothing to do with customer journey mapping, just to start breaking down those silos. So we'll give them like a scenario and then break them into little groups. And that really illustrates when they come back and give us their ideas, just how differently they all think, right? You've got your experience, your background, whether you're flying in from another country, your nationality experience. Have you ever even used the product yourself? Often these people haven't even had experiences, right? They don't come from the industry. So we really illustrate to them, look, this is why we're here today, because customer journey mapping starts with internal to really build those key moments, Casey, you alluded to earlier. The other thing I'll say about customer journey mapping, people don't look at the risks enough because they don't want to have those difficult conversation. There's a reason why there's friction all the time between product and CS or sales and CS. There's so much friction, and it's because they do a blame game on who's responsible for that churn or that poor moment in the journey. So we really go deep on those.
It's interesting because basically, so tell me if I'm getting this right or not, but a lot of times I think journey mapping, people think, okay, what are all the touch points that a customer has? But it's more important to think about, okay, so they first are touched by marketing. Their last touch is usually by the account team or CS who's responsible for renewing the customer and keeping them around long term. And then there's a whole bunch of teams in the middle that have an impact on what that customer is going to experience: product, engineering, sales, etc. And those teams are not always aligned. So a lot of times I think people hear customer journey mapping and their goal is, how do we streamline the customer experience? But really what you're saying is, how do we have alignment across different teams that historically are not talking to each other?
Exactly. And thankfully, there are things like Slack now where you can set up teams, SWAT teams, to fix some of these things. Or if someone writes something really negative on social media about your product, that's instantly pulled into your Slack channel, and there's a process that's put in place, right? So there's not only increased alignment once you have a customer journey map and you identify where all those challenges are, but also there's faster service to
Mm.
alleviate that issue until, I mean, if it's a product problem, for example, product can start gaining visibility into, wow, maybe we do need to move this up in the roadmap. And here's what's going to have to wait because this is really resulting in more churn, for example. So it creates a lot of visibility.
Hmm. Amelia, oh gosh, give me a lot to think about here, and especially that part where you say they're not considering the risks. And when you said, "Hey, I'm either going to do two things. I'm either going to have them identify customers that are doing really well or customers that are churning." Which one, if you could only start with one,
Yeah.
again, almost going back to the would you rather game, which
Mhm.
one would you want to start with this customer journey mapping? Would you want to start with why are people churning or why are people being successful? Where would you start if you could choose?
Yeah, so I would start with churn, and here's why. We're going to interview best in class. We always ask, can we please interview your customers, even if it's just three? We want to interview who's doing really well with your product, where they adopted the key moments during onboarding that resulted in buying more seats or becoming a reference for you or a case study. Then we want one who is recently churned. We want to understand, why did they go away? And then another one who is in the journey, maybe they recently went through onboarding, and really understand what was that experience like, because more often than not, the two main reasons churn occurs is a poor onboarding. They never saw value. They maybe never purchased the product, someone else did, and now they're being asked to implement and they don't see the value. Maybe their heart is being tugged by a product they felt comfortable with at another company. And so they have a poor onboarding and they don't want to adopt it. The other one is champion leaves, right? More than ever, we see people leaving their jobs, finding new ones. Now that all this back to work mandate is happening, we're going to see more people leave as well, find new jobs. And so as a result, I would prefer to start with churn. Let's get ahead of the problem, right? And show them, how do you do this well so that we can reduce this churn? And even consider, what's your win back, right? You may have lost them, but what's your strategy for reaching out in 3 months to see how it's going, or 6 months, or a holiday gesture, even for your churn clients? I mean, clients who don't select us, we still send them the nurture campaigns. The clients who we've completed work with, we still send them the holiday greetings, all of those things. They're still part of our journey. We can still learn from them.
It's you said something that I think is I want to drill into a little bit more, because you mentioned how I can see the value of working with a group like yours, because a lot of times I get the sense that there's a lot of different teams who probably feel really defensive in these types of conversations. And like the fact that you mentioned an icebreaker at the start to help them, and do an activity to help them see how they all think differently. I guess I kind of want to play the blame game a little bit, which I know I probably shouldn't, and maybe you feel uncomfortable answering this question. But when you go in with a team, where do the friction points exist the strongest between different groups, right? CS and sales is one that I see and feel acutely in a lot of the organizations that I talk to. But I'm curious, when you get everybody together, right? Because there's 5 or 6 different teams usually represented there. Where is the greatest friction lie? When it comes down to, hey, it's a crummy onboarding experience, who starts pointing fingers at who? I'd be curious to get your take there.
Right. I mean, I've been in rooms where we've just had to pause. We said we're going to let everyone's feelings calm down a little bit. Like, we need to take a break. Everyone needs to go get some fresh air. And then in one instance, the mic was left on and I was remote, and there was fists being slammed, lots of swearing. It was a very uncomfortable situation. I was not on camera at that moment when we took that breather, but yes, emotions run high, and it is often between sales and CS, right? The average CS leader, it feels like lasts shorter times in their tenure and in their role than sales leaders. And I have no data to back that up or tell you why at this time, but there is a lot of blame game around there. And I believe that the handoff is where churn can really occur. You have a poor handoff. I just spent 3 months telling a salesperson all my pain points, what my goals are with this system, and the people that are going to be involved, and that didn't get relayed. We're the key people on this kickoff. Like, what is happening? That frustration can start very quickly. So yes, on the handoff needs to be seamless. I think it's really important. That's one of the biggest blame games. The other one is leading up to renewal. If you don't have clear roles for customer success, account management, or sales, whoever's responsible for that final, there can be friction, especially if commission's involved. Why CSM? Why am I doing all the work? And then this account manager comes in at the last 30 days, gets the commission, and at the all hands gets the glory, and everyone's clapping because they made the renewal, right? There's tension there, morale's down. And so you have to get through those conversations and talk about it. The product one, the biggest one, is when there is an adoption or new products been rolled out and massive increase in support tickets. People are frustrated, or where's the training? Where are the webinars? Or where's your documentation? That's often a lot of points of friction that can lead to churn as well, and that you really have to talk through.
Oh my gosh, I think she just triggered like half our audience, Todd, with those comments. They're like starting to twitch in their eye and different things like that, especially on the CS one. Holy cow. Uh since she opened up Pandora's box, I'm gonna dive deeper into it. All right, Emilia, tell me, how would you structure that with that CS and that AM that you just talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Not an uncommon scenario. Todd and I have heard that quite frequently. How would you do it? Would you have AMs? Would you just let CS do the whole thing? Again, we're going to pretend you're CEO of your own company here. You just came in to take over on the CS leadership team. You maybe do 100 million in renewals. How would you set it up? Give the audience maybe a little peek into insights that you would do
Yeah.
if you had the opportunity.
I do believe at 100 million, you do need an account management team. It's, I'm guessing if it's, let's say it's not a Canva that's very intuitive to use, but rather an enterprise platform. First of all, onboarding, you need to tell the client at the kickoff, this is your team who's going to be enabling you, whether it's professional services, onboarding, whoever. Then here is what's going to happen once the sign off that the onboarding is complete. You're going to have a team who's going to support you. And really, that's the adoption phase, right? More training, rolling out more of the features. You never want to force someone during onboarding to learn every single feature. You want to ensure that their pain points are addressed and that they're seeing value quickly. So once they're in the adoption phase and you're telling them, here's what's going to happen, you also need to tell them, this is your account manager. If it's not the same person as sales, like a Cisco, for example, the person who sells isn't necessarily the person who's renewing unless it's new business. But for the renewal, if there is an account manager, tell the client. Don't let it be a surprise 30 days before. That's just a terrible experience. By then, if the client's unhappy, they've already found another platform and they're just informing that AM that we're not renewing. Glad you reached out, because we're not renewing. So I do think that it's not a bad thing. It's critical during CS enablement when you're bringing new people onto your team that you explain to them, this is your role. I also believe that CSMs should be incentivized. In fact, the whole company should be incentivized. Even if it's 5% of your salary, the assistant, the marketing manager, whoever it is, regardless of title, to have an incentive to care. I have experienced results in better outcomes, at least revenue wise and customer experience wise. Like I'm more likely to pick up garbage on the ground if I'm educated and know the impact it will have, especially things that are going to harm the environment and animals if they're hurt, if they eat it. So that's the same thing with the human psychology around incentivize, like teach them, tell them what their role is and what they're going to get out of it and what the client will get out of it.
Oh, I love that. It's when you think about the kind of the most commonplace. Obviously, we've talked about a few of the biggest pain points that people feel in this customer journey mapping experience. What do you see as kind of the first step that most people need to do? Like, let's say I've figured out, I've got everybody together. I see where all the holes are. Like, what's the first way that you would recommend tackling some of these problems?
Yeah, we don't just look at what the current customer journey map is. We talk about what is the ideal, right? No one wants to pay a consultant just to map, just go hire a BA, a business analyst to document current processes. That's okay. It'll be outdated in a quarter anyways. But what's more impactful is what is the ideal customer journey? And then who's going to be responsible for making that happen? it should be one owner and then a team. And so during customer journey mapping, we teach the RACI model, really making sure that we know who's accountable for success and then who needs to get out of the way and just be informed, right? Too often, I mean, I hate doing this, but we have to do this sometimes where we have to tell the client, you're getting in your own way. Like you hired these people to do the job. Just let them do the job. They signed up for it. We all agreed who's going to actually be accountable, and it's very transparent. You're getting the updates. Read them, right? So I think that's really important. Is if you want to do this successfully, don't just map the current, map the future, and then hold people accountable to it.
What percent of people do it? What percent of people say there's enough value here to designate a person to actually own this? Is there a particular role that that person has or a title that you've seen? What's some best practices in that one ownership? How much time does it take? Is there a full-time job? Is that what you're advising them to be? Give us some more detail around that. Double click on that.
Sure. Once the customer journey map is done, and it's really like hundreds of sticky notes on a wall, we use very much agile methodology. Then we turn that into a Miro, right? And not one person owns it. You can have a PMO, you can have a project manager overseeing the initiative, but people need to own certain pieces. You can't expect the head of product to own the sales to CS handoff optimization, right? Uh, I will say often we're called in to help with those. So we will help with the facilitation or the teaching of, okay, here's the seamless handoff methodology the company's adopted. Let's train them. Let's role play. Let's put it in their CRM or CSP. Here's how it's going to go in their learning management system for when new employees come on board. And then we've even gone as far as creating those videos, those training videos for clients. So I don't think there's one overall owner. There can be one project manager, but different people need to own different parts of the journey. Product friction, that needs to be owned by the product team. And customer journey mapping isn't a one-time experience. When we work with clients, we take about 6 weeks to complete the experience. And then we recommend as a team, you should continue this at least meeting for an hour every 45 days. Your customer journey map will quickly become outdated as your product evolves, as your client needs change, as something huge could happen again. I mean, we've witnessed it. We've had a global pandemic. We've had now people going back to work. Then we've had all of these economic changes. We just had a change in our presidential leadership, like a significant shift. So all of these things are going to impact that journey. And those are the things you need to keep talking about. Otherwise, those journeys become quickly outdated.
You know, I think one of the things that seems clear to me when it comes to going through and doing a customer journey map is you're trying to get really strategic about future decision making for how you're going to have teams operate and how they're going to work together. Is there a tactical use case for the journey map after the fact? Because you mentioned the fact that hey, it's got to be a living, breathing thing, right? So how else should we be thinking about journey maps beyond like the hey, here's where we want to go, here's the vision, and is it something we reference, and how do we get more tactical and leveraging it beyond like kind of an initial like ooh, now I kind of see I have something to aim at in the future.
Right.
What would you say that we should use? How can we use it more tactically?
The long term is to create standard operating procedures and playbooks in a CSP, a customer success platform, or a CRM. So one client we worked with, we did a customer journey map exercise a year ago, right? They created their future vision. Then they spent almost 9 months actualizing that customer journey map, the future. What does the future look like? And then they called us back to help them put those playbooks in their CRM, their learning management system, and really make it part of the culture, right? And so that document isn't enough. You actually have to turn it into something. Uh, we've received 250-page documents from other consulting firms that have been handed to us, and they've hired us to actually turn them into action. You
Mm,
actually have to put them into something that a CSM can follow, and that uh, can create triggers. For example, hey, this is a key moment where we're identifying that there's a churn risk. Here's
mm,
how to go about mitigating that challenge. So you do have to get tactical with these. A customer journey map is just the beginning to align, break down silos, and then you have to operationalize them into tactical tasks, essentially.
mm. So good. Oh, I'm learning so much. The problem with this, Todd, is every week we have a great guest and I want to go do everything they tell me to do. And then I don't, then I'm just like, I get overwhelmed. Uh, Emilia, one of the questions that I always like to ask guests uh, is how do I know that this is working? So we had
Mhm.
again Anthony on, and we said, how do
Yeah.
you know that your messaging is landing? And he says, when the majority of your potential customers that you're talking to repeat back what you do and the value you have without you prompting them. It's just part of the vocabulary, and it's the majority, not a small percent. It's the majority of people you're interacting with. They can
Yeah.
repeat back what you do and why it's different. How do I know that this journey mapping is working? I know it takes time. I know we
Mhm.
got to implement it, but what would be some of the bright spots you would want people to see if this is working, or maybe it's not working? And so I need to know that too. What would be some advice, one or two
Yeah.
things that you might tell people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will just say I don't believe that trying to tackle an entire journey, unless you're a very well-funded company that can really have owners across the journey, really move forward with actualizing it. I believe the most successful companies we've worked with focus on small bites, small pieces of the customer journey where the biggest challenge is, and that's often the onboarding. So I would say start small and measure what are the key moments you need products help that you're identifying that lead to growth, customer growth. They renew, they refer, and they buy more of. So once you know, and I'll give you examples, the executives are downloading reports or they're signing up for weekly insight updates, or you have an extension in your product. And if 80% of the users download it, you have found in your data that leads to renewals. And because they can't now imagine their life without it. That's how I feel about HubSpot. That extension lives in my inbox and it's part of everything I do. And it creates visibility for my organization. So identify those three key moments that lead to success with your clients, and then identify three key moments in the journey that are leading to risk for churn. Those risk factors, you need to almost have a SWAT team around it to mitigate those challenges and start measuring. Most of our customers don't have a baseline for often, no matter how successful they are. Half $1 billion company and a early stage startup, you'll be shocked how many similarities they have. And we always say it's okay, but you have to start measuring starting today. We're going to create baselines over this next quarter and then start measuring. So that's how I love to look at everything. You have to think in agile, uh, with an agile mentality of like, let's just start with the biggest opportunities for growth and the biggest churn, and then start measuring quarter over quarter and make tweaks along the way. That's the beauty of being agile.
I'm curious, Amelia, how do you know when your company's ready to even go through this exercise? Because I can imagine a few people who might be listening to this saying, man, I don't we are really immature in our understanding of our current journey, meaning like we're not capturing the right kind of metrics or the right kind of data
Mhm.
to even be able to know if this is going to exist. So what would you say are some things like how do you know if we're ready to actually pull, rally everyone together and actually kind of go through this exercise?
Well, I'm biased. I do believe getting ahead of the problem is the right approach before the house is on fire and the board is breathing down your back that you have to change something or do something. I believe if you have a team that has friction, especially at the leadership level, imagine what's happening on the ground and how that's impacting your customers. So the sooner you can get ahead of it, the better. And some companies will say, I don't have the budget to fly all my leaders to a room. I just tell them, fine, we'll do it over Zoom, but we need your team to commit to 2 to 3 hour
Yeah.
sessions to really have impact. If they're going to be on the other screen, multitasking or on their phone or checking out to take calls, you're wasting a lot of money. So if your team is willing to invest the time and you have challenges, you're already seeing churn or you're seeing opportunities to grow, but you're not actually getting the customers to buy more of the product, for example, it's the right time. Another really right time I would say is if you have really bad NPS or survey scores in general. Um, if you have bad scores and you think your customer journey map is awesome, you have a problem. You need to go through a similar exercise.
That's great. Great response. And, I believe that our listeners, they might not be in these leadership positions. So please share this episode with your leadership. Also, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to my team and start to say, okay, what are these principles? Because I could do that just with my small group, right? And then,
Mhm.
of course, someone's going to recognize it and say, wow, how did you do that? And I'm like, oh, we should be doing this at a deeper level. Let's get someone like Amelia's team in here to help us. But I still think, man, there's so much applicability to just what's in your control. So I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, I cannot, we're getting close to the end, and I have to come back to crunchy conversations. What is a crunchy conversation? And how do I have more of it, or do I want to have less of it?
Yeah.
Like, explain this to me. What is it? Because I love
Yeah.
Captain Crunch cereal, so you got me hooked on the crunchy conversation.
A crunchy conversation is when you're willing to go into a conversation and be okay with having vulnerability in the room and being able to talk to someone with respect and know that it's uncomfortable. You're not going to like everything you hear. You're going to say some things that people may not want to hear either or be offended by, but you have enough respect for yourself and the person you're engaging with or group of people you're engaging with that you all want a better outcome. You all want to work together. It's just there's some things in the way, the elephant in the room, clear the air, all that jargon or sayings people use. You got to get through that, and that requires having a crunchy
Mm.
conversation. I had one yesterday with the client and it was about alignment and roles. And there were three of us and everyone was very courteous. But nearing the end of the meeting, that's when the real crunchy conversation started. And because we were willing to go there, great outcomes occurred afterwards. In fact, since the call yesterday afternoon and this morning, there's been so much progress already. And not enough people are willing to do that. They'd rather go say bad things about that person in another room or about that team or continue to work in silos. And that's not a productive, positive approach to go farther in your career and for your company's growth.
See, so basically what you're saying is nobody wants to have a crunchy conversation, but you know you're winning if you're having crunchy conversations because
Yeah.
it's very easy to become manipulative or insincere in a conversation and smile and nod along through a conversation, but in the meantime you're really thinking something horrible on the other side. And a crunchy conversation is you're getting all of that out in the open and working through it, right? So I'm curious on that front, Amelia, because my imagination runs wild when you talk about people cursing at each other and slamming fists into desks, which that's probably the ultimate. That's not a good that's when a crunchy conversation has moved into probably whatever's worse or bad in a crunchy conversation. So what would you say for, because I would guess there's a lot of people here who are like, you know what, I know that this is a problem, but I'm afraid to put my neck out and actually speak up and say this person is not fulfilling their responsibility, or this team is not living up to the expectation and the accountability that they need to have in order for us to succeed. That's terrifying for someone to say, especially if they're not like protected as the top
Right.
leader in the organization. So what can you do, and or what advice would you give to people who are thinking about everything that we're saying and are afraid to actually step into that space where it's crunchy?
Yeah.
Todd's asking for a friend, Amelia. He's not.
Yeah.
He's
I
just
don't know.
asking.
I
He's
don't
just
know anyone
curious
who's ever
about it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've never had anyone
yeah,
come to me
yeah,
that way and
yeah.
say, I can't be honest and open, you know? So,
All right. I will give you a very fast answer. One is look at your HR, your company's vision and values. See if your company has vision and values. And then always tie back what you want to say to those values.
mm,
So if your company value is radical candor or open communication or committing to KPIs for the quarter, and then you tie it back to one of those KPIs, you never make it about that person. You make it about a company principle or a company KPI. If it's a North Star for the year that everyone signed up for, you can always tie it back to that and you don't make it about them. And I think if you're able to get out of that fear of I'm going to hurt this person or I'm going to get fired, and you bring it up with a tone of I want to work together through this versus I'm angry and you're a jerk, then the tone changes, right? So I think if you make it about a bigger picture and not about that person, then the conversation will have a dramatic shift in the outcome. It doesn't have to get to a yelling match.
Hmm. Well, I had my therapy session for today, Todd. Where do I send my Venmo to you, Amelia? Thank you so much for that. That helped. I appreciate it. Again, how do people follow you if they want more information? What would be the best way for them to start to interact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. And then we do have a newsletter. If you just go to growthmolecules.com, we send out newsletters every Tuesday with everything customer success that we're experiencing with our clients or upcoming events or blogs that we're writing. Definitely have a team of writers that we all just love to write about what we're experiencing with our clients and in tech.
Oh, Amelia, don't
oh,
forget about your book. Tell them about your book too. For
Ah,
those, we have a lot of female leaders that are out there. You have an amazing book. I love what that stands for. But tell them a little bit about that too.
the book Sabina Pons and I wrote are about pressing on as a tech mom. Both Sabina and I have children. And we noticed during the pandemic, a substantial number of women were leaving, especially moms, because we were being asked to be Zoom facilitators for our children so they could go to school while also holding a job. And it came out that in marriages, shall we say, or partnerships, it was the man making more, so the woman was leaving. And so we wrote a book. We interviewed 300 women around the world. We feature 12 of them and their very raw stories with very different backgrounds and experiences in tech. And then really it's an encouragement book around getting over imposter syndrome for people who don't have children but want to sponsor, mentor, and keep moms in tech. We give a lot of tips around that as well. So it's not a book that's negative or bashing anyone. It's really about educating and enabling mothers in tech. I believe we have a place in this world. It's not a brotopia, and that we can have a significant impact on the future of technology because we're users of that tech as well.
I love it. So good. Emilia, you've been a wonderful guest. We always end each of our episodes with one final question. Now, we've had a pretty therapeutic conversation today, at which I learned that when you get a massage, a therapeutic a therapeutic massage is not supposed to feel good, right? It's supposed to dig in really hard and hurt. And a lot of this was pretty therapeutic today. So, as far as any good therapy session, right, it always ends with some level of an action, a takeaway, a homework assignment, if you will. And so if you could give our audience one homework assignment based off of our conversation today, what would it be?
It would be, don't be afraid to role play difficult conversations. Find someone that you really trust and say, I'm been thinking about this conversation I have to have with a client coming up. It's making me sick to my stomach, or I'm having a challenge with one of my colleagues. Can I just role play that conversation with you? Because the more you practice any hard skill is how you're going to get better. That's how athletes do it. And we all have that ability. One person who did it in one of our classes didn't have someone they felt comfortable doing this exercise with. So they role played with their cat. They uploaded the video to the LMS
Awesome.
and they got 100%. I was so proud of her for having that difficult conversation. It was with their cat, and that's absolutely fine. So I would say practice what's hard. Practice hard skills.
So cool.
I love it. Great advice. Emilia, thank you again for coming on, and everyone have a great week. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.